Hello girls, I hope you're staying safe at home. So in biology, today we are going to start with the respiratory system. Now you know that respiration is the most important process in all living organisms. If you don't respire means we are dead. So it goes on non-stop throughout life. So in this chapter we are going to learn about respiration, the raw materials used, the end products formed, and how much energy is liberated. And we are also learning certain experiments to demonstrate the mechanism of breathing. You'll find it very interesting. Now, respiration defined, okay, is the chemical process of releasing energy by breaking down glucose for carrying out life processes. Now, for various life processes, internal or external, we require energy. So that energy comes from breaking down of glucose by oxygen, and the process is known as respiration. And this is how glucose is broken down by oxygen into 6 molecules of carbon dioxide, 6 molecules of water vapor, which is given out, and energy which is utilized in the body. Now there are 5 important points you need to remember in this chemical reaction. Now this part of the respiration which gives out energy, this part takes place in the living cells. So it is known as cellular or tissue respiration. And this breakdown of glucose into carbon dioxide and water, it does not take place in a single step, but it takes place in a series of chemical steps, that is one after another. Some of these steps occur in the cytoplasm of the cell and some inside the mitochondria. Now, each step is due to a particular enzyme. Now you know enzyme is a biological catalyst which helps speed up the reaction but itself remains unchanged. Okay. Now the energy that is liberated in this reaction, that is the glucose breaks down and energy is liberated, all is not in the form of heat. A large part of it is converted into chemical energy, which is known as ATP. And you know the full form of ATP is adenosine triphosphate. So we have done it in the case of respiration in plants also. When ATP is used as energy, it is converted to ADP, adenosine diphosphate. Tri means 3-phosphate, di means 2-phosphate. And again, when more energy is required by the breakdown of glucose or available, the ADP is reconverted into ATP, and this continues. So ATP is also known as the energy currency of the cell. And remember children, this is important, 1 mole of glucose, when it completely is oxidized by oxygen, it gives 38 molecules of ATP. That is a lot. And the steps of cellular respiration are same in all living organisms, be it plants or animals. Now, why do we need energy? Body cells need energy for many activities that takes place inside the body. Okay, that is making of proteins from amino acids, production of enzymes, contractions of muscles for movements. When you run about, when you move from place to place, when you walk, you need a lot of energy. So for that, the muscles are contracted. Okay, and even when nerve cells conduct impulses, when you feel, when you see, when you hear, for the conduction of electrical impulse also energy is required. For cell division, when new cells are produced, for that also we need energy. And in keeping the body warm, that is especially in warm-blooded, we are warm-blooded, birds and mammals are warm-blooded. That means we have a constant body temperature which doesn't change. Okay, now animals need more energy. Now you know animals and plants, the difference. Plants are rooted to a place, so they need energy only for their internal activities, as well as slight external activities like phototropism, geotropism, moving towards the light or moving towards the water in the soil. Okay, but animals, they move a lot, not only in their places, but they move from place to place looking for food, for shelter. So that is why there is more energy required in animals than in plants, because animals, they consume more energy when they are doing physical work. So the physical work that animals do is they have to move about from place to place looking for food, obtaining food, or they have to run away from enemies. They have to chew their food. They have to look after the eggs or young ones. And there are, of course, so many other physical activities that animals do. And when you look at birds and mammals, they need still more energy. Because why? We are warm blooded. Birds are warm blooded. Mammals are warm blooded. And a lot of heat must be produced in our body for keeping the body warm. So this heat comes through respiration in the cells. Remember, the heat that is keeping our body warm, keeping our body constant at constant temperature, comes through respiration in the cells. So the amount of heat required to keep the body warm is quite large, especially during the winter days when the outside temperature is below our body temperature. We are constantly losing heat to the outside, okay, and more of it has to be produced inside our body to make up for the loss of heat, that the heat that we give away from our body, okay. And liver cells in particular produce much heat. Remember, liver cells produce heat, the organ which produces heat in our body. If you get in your one word answers, your answer will be liver cells. And even muscle cells also contributed. When you move about, when you run, especially during the winters, when you run about, when you play, you feel warm because the muscles will produce a lot of heat, okay. Sometimes you shiver and clatter, especially during the winters when you take a bath. Remember, you shiver and your teeth clatter, okay, when you feel too cold. It is an emergency activity of the muscle cells. The muscles are working, okay, because extra heat must be produced to keep the body warm, okay. Now, the energy used in all the cellular activities, is from the oxidation, breaking down of glucose by oxygen. That is a carbohydrate that you receive from the carbohydrate in the food that you take in. Rice, chapatis, all these are rich in carbohydrates. Now, glucose has no alternative for respiration. Now, if the simple carbohydrate, that is glucose, is not available directly, the cells may break down the proteins or fats to produce glucose. So, glucose must be broken down by oxygen. It is only glucose. It cannot break down proteins or fats. So first, proteins and fats must be broken down into glucose, and then it is made available for the oxygen to act on it and break it down to release energy. Now think about the wild animals, which are carnivorous, totally flesh eaters. So what is the main constraint? They do not have any carbohydrates in their body. They eat only proteins and very less carbohydrates. The excess amino acids, amino acid is the smallest particle of protein which is absorbed by protein digestion, are broken down in the liver to produce sugar. So it is taken to the liver, and in the liver these amino acids are broken down and then glucose is produced, okay. And remember, the nitrogenous part of the protein is converted into urea, which gets excreted out. Urea is poisonous. It must not accumulate in the blood, so it goes out through the urine. And the glucose part, which is produced, is used immediately, or it may be get stored in the liver cells as glycogen for future needs. So in the liver, excess of glucose is stored as glycogen, and when required, the glycogen reconverts back into glucose, okay. So in the same way, the same process takes place in humans if they take excessively protein rich food. Nowadays you've heard about ketogenic diets, especially for ones who want to lose weight. They're eating only proteins. Carbohydrates, they are not taking carbohydrates because carbohydrates accumulate in the body as excess fat, okay. So what happens when they take only protein rich food? The protein will be converted into glucose in the liver, little bit will be stored as glycogen, and some will be used directly at that time. Now, you have already learned about the two kinds of respiration, aerobic and anaerobic respiration. Now, when we look in general, all animals, they normally respire aerobically, that is using oxygen. Now, anaerobic respiration in the absence of oxygen is only exceptional in some cases, as in tapeworms or roundworms which live inside the human intestines, because in the human intestines there is no way by which oxygen is going to reach. When we breathe in, oxygen goes into the lungs. So the bacteria, if we have parasites like tapeworms or roundworms in our intestines, then they will not get any oxygen. So the only way they breathe is anaerobically, that is in the absence of oxygen. So if these bacteria or these parasites come out from the intestines in the open, they will die. Now, anaerobic respiration may occur even in our own body, especially in the fast working skeletal muscles temporarily. Now, when there is continuous physical exercise like in fast running, walking over long distances, swimming, wrestling, weightlifting, the muscles work too fast, but it is not getting enough oxygen at that moment. So in this situation, what happens? The muscles are working, but in the absence of oxygen. That is anaerobic respiration, to give extra energy, especially during sports time and all. Suddenly you run and then you get cramps. Why are you getting cramps? Because your muscles are breathing, they are respiring in the absence of oxygen. Okay, because your muscles are working too fast. That is, the oxygen is not reaching those tissues at the same speed as they are working. So the anaerobic respiration in the muscles produces lactic acid. And when lactic acid accumulates in the muscles, it gives a feeling of fatigue. You feel tired. Okay, so this condition is known as oxygen death. That is, you're not getting oxygen. So when you rest after such exercise, the lactic acid slowly gets oxidized. Then oxygen will reach later, okay, and it will be available, and then the lactic acid slowly gets oxidized and the depth is cleared, and it produces carbon dioxide in the process. So it is during that time when you get cramps, when it pains. Okay, now chemical steps in respiration. Aerobic respiration, the chemical change that takes place in aerobic respiration, that is respiration in the presence of oxygen, it is the same like that we studied in plants. Okay, so glucose combines with 6 molecules of oxygen to give 6 molecules of carbon dioxide, 6 molecules of water, and 686 kilocalorie per mole of energy. That is 38 ATP. Okay, so this actually is the chemical substance in mole. That is 1 mole of glucose, or 1 molecule of glucose reacts with 6 molecules of oxygen, 6 molecules of carbon dioxide, to give 6 molecules of carbon dioxide, 6 molecules of water, and 686 kilocalorie per mole. Now in this reaction, energy is represented in the form of ATP as 38 ATP plus 420 kilocalories of heat energy, which is produced. Okay, now moving on to anaerobic respiration in animals. Now we talked about how anaerobic respiration takes place in the skeletal muscles when there is sudden movement. Anaerobic respiration occurs when it works very fast in the absence of oxygen, or insufficient, very less oxygen. So here oxygen is not there, but yet glucose is broken down into lactic acid, only 2 ATP energy, and a lot of heat energy. So the points that you need to remember in anaerobic respiration is, it is a very slow process. The reaction cannot continue for a long time. It is only temporary, because the product lactic acid has a toxic effect on the cells, poisonous effect, which causes muscle fatigue and aches. So those of you who take part in sports, athletics, that is why you are getting cramps, because of accumulation of lots of lactic acid in the muscle, which causes the cramps. Okay, and there you can see no carbon dioxide is produced. Later, when oxygen comes back to the muscles, that time the lactic acid is oxidized and then the carbon dioxide is produced. Now the total energy released per molecule, that is for 1 molecule of glucose, is just 2 ATP. As you can see, it is very less compared to aerobic respiration. In aerobic respiration, there are 38 ATPs released. Now, the basic steps in cellular respiration in plants and animals, they are the same. But if you see, the anaerobic respiration is different in the two. Here in animals, lactic acid is produced, but if you remember, in the plants, what was produced? Ethyl alcohol was produced. Okay, so here this is the difference. Okay, for your assignment, please write down this difference as well. The first assignment you're going to do is to write the difference in anaerobic respiration in plants and animals, and followed by how anaerobic respiration takes place in the skeletal cells. Okay, so products of glucose breakdown are ethanol and carbon dioxide, ethyl alcohol. But in anaerobic respiration, only lactic acid is produced, no carbon dioxide, and just 2 ATP. Okay, and amount of heat energy released is more, but in anaerobic respiration, amount of heat energy released is less. Okay, so parts of respiration I will do in the next upload. So I've already told you what your assignment is, so submit it day after tomorrow at the usual time. So till then, children, stay safe. God bless you.